Camperdown, so I'm in Jagged Land, and just acknowledge the traditional owners, past and present. And I would really like to thank Lucinda for presenting again. Yeah, the previous session that we had was really great. So I'm looking forward to this session. And yeah, please, as well, Monica, feel free to ask any questions. Lucinda will tell you this, but yeah, ask any questions throughout.
Yeah.
Lucinda has lots of knowledge about things. So yeah, if you've got any specific
Mm.
questions about your home, feel free to ask. But yeah, thank you very much, Lucinda.
Yeah, I'm happy to answer absolutely anything, even if it's not about draft sealing. So,
Okay.
I'd just like to make a quick acknowledgement as well. I'm in Wurundjeri Woiwurrung land, and I just want to express my gratitude to every elder that I go and hear speak. I feel like I learn new things, and I'm a bit in awe of the generosity with which they continually share all this information with people, even after so many years of people ignoring it. And a couple of things I've noticed, because I've only recently been really taking notice of the seasons. And last month it was the grass flowering season, and someone said that to me at an event, and they went, "Has anyone been having hay fever?" And I went, "Oh, is that what it is? It's because it's grass flowering season," which was amazing. And then this month is the kangaroo apple season. I think that's what it is. In any case, that's when the kangaroo apples bloom. And I literally that morning was gardening and dug one out of my veggie patch to put somewhere else. So yeah, I think it's amazing that these things, the season changes and immediately there it is, right outside the door. But unless you know that, you just don't see it. Anyway, I will get talking. So my name, as Prue said, is Lucinda, and I've been doing home energy efficiency assessments for quite a long time, 10 plus years, and I really enjoy talking with people about how they can do things to their homes. And so much so that I've been gradually doing more and more training and presenting just because I feel like the more people that can learn these things, the better, and everyone can have conversations and share the information. Tonight's session is very specifically about draft sealing, but as I said, happy to answer other questions. We're going to talk about why draft sealing matters. And I'm sure everyone's got a bit of an idea of it, but we're going to talk it through anyway. Then some of the common drafts that you'll find in a house and what to do about them. So we'll look at products or techniques of things you can do. We'll quickly talk about drafts versus condensation because people often get worried about draft sealing and worry that their home will end up with a lot of condensation in it. And then we will talk about what to do next once you've figured out what the problems are. So drafts matter for two main reasons. And the biggest one and the one that is most well known is just that each piece of draft, even though they're small in and of themselves, if you add them all together, it's said that the average Victorian home, it's like having a metre square window open all the time, day and night, which is really massive, and none of us would knowingly do that. But by having lots of little drafts, often that's the effect. The other reason draft proofing matters is that drafts feel cold. So even if you actually have a room nicely heated, if you've got a little cold draft blowing in under a door, it might not change the temperature of the room dramatically, but it's going to make you feel cold, which makes you turn the heating up, which costs you more money. So there's a couple of good reasons to be thinking about it. There's two main aims with draft sealing, and one is to block gaps in the external shell of the home. And what we mean by that is just anywhere in the house that's separating you from the weather outside. It accounts for between 5 and 15% heat gain in summer and 15 and 25% heat loss in winter. So imagine if you could reduce the heat loss out of your home by 25% by just sealing up some drafts. That would be well worthwhile. But the other aim is to block problem areas inside your house. So, for example, a really common one is that a bathroom might have an unsealed exhaust fan, or it might have an old skylight that's vented at the top. That ends up being a really drafty room. And even though it's not outside, you can draft seal the doors to that room and pretend that it's outside and sort of separate it out from your living space. Or even a excessively hot or cold area. By separating them out, you're not putting that impact through to the rest of the house. Now, zoning is always the thing I start with, even though it's not strictly about draft sealing, but it is about reducing the flowing of air from one space to another. So it is relevant. And when I think about zoning, I'm just thinking about treating each area of your home as a different space and trying to limit the amount of airflow between them, because if you're heating or cooling one space, you don't want to lose that heat or cool to another space. And it also can be a good way of, for example, a two-story home, separating the top from the bottom so that all your heat is not heading upstairs. Now, I'm just going to grab my laser pointer so I can talk about some of these. These are all DIY zoning options. This one is someone who's just got an old curtain from the op shop and stuck it with Velcro tape to the top of the stairwell. So it's going down there, and they've got bulldog clips closing it. So look, it's not the most pretty version of a curtain, but it's doing a really good job and keeping the warm air either up or down, depending what they want from it. This one on the right is a telescopic pole with a lightweight curtain hung over it. And I remember that house, this curtain was separating two equally large open living spaces, and they had an air conditioner in one end, and this halved the amount of space that air conditioner was trying to condition. So it's a simple and very effective way to improve your comfort, but also reduce your costs. Now, hang on, just trying to make this move. Sorry, I can't get my mouse to move. I'm just going to keep going. These are some more quick options. The one on the left is the two-story home, using a curtain on a ceiling track with a bend in it. And the one on the right was another house I went to recently. That curtain doesn't even reach the floor, and when they put it in, they said they were a bit dubious about how much it would actually help, but when they did, it made a big difference. Now, back to draft proofing, the real sort of draft proofing. This seems like it goes without saying, but what you're wanting to do is physically blocking air movement from one place to another. So because you're just physically blocking air, I like to say that you can use pretty much anything, and the rest of it is aesthetics. And what I mean by that is you might have a gap in a skirting, under the skirting boards, and you could stuff it with newspaper, and that's going to be sealing the gap. Or you can nicely put a strip of cork in there, or you could put a new timber bead. There's all sorts of ways you can do it. As long as it's filling the gap, it's going to work. Now, the other reason I mention this is that there are a few free draft sealing items that are available under the Victorian Energy Upgrade Scheme, and they're the people that used to door knock. They're not allowed to door knock anymore, but they would go along streets and door knock and offer to put in draft seals for front doors, for example. But often they're draft sealing products theoretically, but they're installed in such a way as they're not actually filling the gap, not sealing the gap. So that's something to be aware of. That this example is a chimney draft, and chimneys have a massive amount of draft. So it's important to block them. These people thought they had their chimneys blocked because a chimney draft stopper has been installed, but as you can see, it doesn't fit properly. So it's not actually doing the job. Yeah. Oh. No, that's right. What's the question?
I was going to say, does that include because we've got a fire. We've actually got 2 fires, but they're in, they're like a Canara unit. Are
Oh,
they
yeah.
still prone to
No.
drafts? No.
No,
Okay.
no, they're fine because they've got doors and they're enclosed. This is
Yeah.
really about
Right.
open chimneys with, just an
Okay.
open fireplace.
Yep.
So you shouldn't have to worry about that.
All right.
So this picture shows a whole lot of places that are typical places that drafts can occur in a house. So when we send you a copy of this, we'll send you the video recording, but also a copy of the slides. It's worth having a look at this list and just trying to work out which ones might apply to your house. Every house is different. Part of it depends on what appliances you have, what lights you have, but part of it also depends on how old your house is. Because if your home is pre sort of mid 1990s, there will be some extra drafts that were purposely built in for air quality safety, but nowadays we don't need them because we're not creating dangerous air most of the time. And so, yeah, those are some extra things that you need to pay attention to. Just because newer homes are built with less purposely added gaps doesn't mean they're draft free. These days, if you had a brand new home, you could still have drafts, but it's most likely going to be due to the way certain things were installed and a lack of attention to detail from tradespeople sealing up the holes that they've created and, actually sealing around the edges of the windows that they've put in, things like that. I love this graph because it is such a visual way to see what impact different drafts have. This shows how many cubic meters of air leakage per hour are caused by different air leakage sites. And this one, the chimney, as you can see, is massive. It's about 650 cubic meters of air leakage per hour. And that's what matters so much, but not for yours, Monica. It won't apply to yours because they're enclosed systems. But if anyone has, the thing with chimneys is often people have them and they don't even use them as a fireplace. So they sort of don't register as being a thing. They're just there and they look pretty and you can't see the hole. So you don't think much about it. But if you know anybody that has an open chimney that hasn't been draft sealed, or even if it has one of the free seals in it, just get them to pay a bit of attention and have a look up it. Often when they're unsealed, you can just see light at the top of the tunnel. This is another one that might be surprising is evaporative cooler vents. If you have an evaporative cooling system, the vents in the ceiling are quite drafty because of the way those systems are designed to allow constant airflow through them. And this is another one that's typical of older houses is when they have wall or ceiling vents put in them on purpose. This is from pre-mid 90s. But if you have 12 of those in a house, you can see there's about, say, 140 cubic meters of air leakage per hour in and out of those vents. So it's pretty massive. Finding drafts. So there are a few ways to find drafts, but I tend to like the sort of really simple ones. One of them is feeling it. If you're standing in your kitchen washing the dishes and you can feel a draft at your feet or on your shoulder, figure out where it's from. Generally, you can feel them, especially when it's windy. The other option, the next option is seeing them. If you know roughly where to look, then if you can see light, that means it's a draft. If you go to your front door and have a look around the edges and then crouch down and have a look underneath, if you can see a strip of light in any of those spots, it's a draft and you need to sort it out. Then there's the incense stick or the candle, which work in a similar way. The best way is if you wait for a windy day where there's lots of air blowing around and then walk around with an incense stick or with a candle and just see what's happening. And if that smoke or flame is being blown around, you'll know something's afoot. If you happen to be able to borrow a thermal camera, which I believe you do have in the libraries there, don't you, Prue? Yeah. So the first thing is just getting to know how it works. They're not hard to use in a basic way, but they do have a few quirks. Like if you point them towards a window, then windows can reflect your own body heat and things like that. So just keep in mind that there are a few oddities about them, but if you use them in a very general sense by looking at the ceiling or the walls, they're pretty simple. And the way they work is they're modeling differences in heat or cool by color. The warmest is the yellower and the coolest is the blue, and then it goes in between. So as an example, well, as a few examples, this front door, you can see there's drafts down the side of the door. There's drafts in the mail slot and definitely underneath. The other interesting thing here is, see, that's the top of the door, but the cold bit is there. So that looks like it might be lack of insulation, whereas there might be some insulation there. It's a bit tricky to know. This is a double door with glass. The glass is obviously cold, but also where the whole hinge, the lock mechanism must be pretty drafty too. And this shows some gaps on a skirting, at the skirting board, where there's a hole where cold air looks like it's coming out. So in order to maximize the effect, the more difference between heat inside and outside, the better, because remember, it's showing differences in heat and cold. And when there aren't that many differences, you can't see the difference in color very well. So the bigger the difference, the better, which means if it's a cold morning, turn the heating up full blast, and then see where cold air might be coming in. One way is to turn on a couple of exhaust fans, and that will help draw cold air in from outside. Okay, let's talk about drafts themselves. I'm going to start with doors and windows, even though I personally think doors and windows are some of the trickiest things to draft seal, because whereas other drafts are more, they're just a simple hole that you might need to do something about, doors and windows are movable. They've got hinges and locks and bottoms, sides and tops. So they might be, a door might be opening onto a tread plate or threshold, or it might be opening indoors over carpet or outdoors over something else. So there's a lot of differences in them, and it's sometimes tricky to figure out what you need. So I've listed a few of the things that you can think of, but what I would suggest is going to some YouTube videos about particular drafts, or there's a company called EcoMaster that sells really good quality draft sealing products, but also has videos. And the way they list them, and it's all free to look at as well, the way they list them is that they'll say, okay, do you want to look for doors or windows? Doors. Okay, what sort of door is it? Is it a front door? Is it a French door? Different, is it a bifold door? And then you drill down into the door type that you have, and then it will say, this is a good bottom seal for a door that opens inwards over carpet, or this is a good door seal for, one that does this. So this is a really good way to research what you might need. And even if you don't buy the products from them, you'll know what it is you're aiming for and what's going to do the trick. So I reckon that's a great way to start. Just a few basic ones. The plastic stick-on seal are all over the place because they're the ones that are done free under the Victorian Energy Upgrade Scheme. They can work okay. They frequently don't stick very well because the doors haven't been cleaned properly. So if it does fall off, you could try nailing it or screwing it onto the bottom of the door. The door bottom brush seal, this one at the bottom, that can be a bit better, whereas this one is a solid piece of plastic. So imagine if your door is opening over a slightly uneven threshold, it might catch on this side, and that's going to make the whole thing more likely to fall off. Whereas with a brush seal, that brush just, it can go over things. So if there's a bit of unevenness, it's not such a big deal. So that's a better option. And also see how it's screwed on there. That's going to give it a more lasting seal. You can get a whole range of different widths of this too. I think the longest amount of brush is 5 centimeters, which is a huge gap. So you can get one to suit. Then there's this one, which is one of my favorite ones. You might have seen it on various doors. It's called an RP3 drop-down seal. And it lives on the door on an angle. So that means it's quite good for going over raised surfaces or things like that. And then when the door closes, there's a little round shaft on the end of the door frame, and it pushes the seal down to get a really good fit. So that's a really good one for external doors where they might be open to rain or wind and, you know, leaves and things like that, because they give such a nice good fit. And this is another one, the roller seal, that's suitable for doors that open onto carpet. So that's the bottom of the door, but what about the perimeter? Perimeter just means the sides and the top, and it also refers to windows. This product here is the kind that you would buy at a hardware store. That's usually a compression strip made of either foam or rubber. They can work okay. The biggest problem with them occurs when the gap that they're filling isn't an even gap. And so if you put that, for example, that's what this is. If you put that all around your window, you might have only had half the size gap at the top as the bottom. So suddenly the window won't close properly because you've now got this piece of foam in there that's too big. It can work though if the gap is even, or you can get some different thicknesses of this and try and mix and match to get the right thickness on each gap. But this product can be a better option. It's called V-Seal. The way that it's made is it's got self-adhesive on one side and the other part is just a V, but because there's no real bulk to it like the foam or the rubber, it's much more amenable to changes in the gap, and the V will just open or shut to wherever it needs to be. It can be used for doors and also for windows, and also for aluminium frame windows sometimes if they're old and getting a bit leaky. It's quite a low cost alternative as well. You buy it by the roll, by 5 meters, so one roll will go a fair way. This is the better quality seal. If you happen to hire a professional draft sealing person, which there are, they would put in this kind of timber seal with a compression strip in it. And this is how they get installed. So you can see it's not in the gap where the door is closing onto the frame. It's in the frame and the door closes onto it. So when you've got a door where there's actually a gap between the door closing and the frame, and you can see the light through it, this can widen the frame of the door, which gives it a better fit. You can also use those on a sash window. This is slightly different. It's the same kind of timber seal, but this has got it's not a compression strip, it's the fluffy stuff. I can't think of the name, but whatever the fluffy stuff is that goes on a seal. If you've got French doors, there's an actual French door draft sealing kit, and one of the differences, it'll have one of these astragal seals that goes down the middle. Often a French door, they might have good seals except for the middle, so that might be all you need to solve the problem. And then there's shug windows, which are these kind, 2 pieces of, it's sort of like a sash window except usually aluminium framed, and the pieces of I think it's often clear acrylic, not glass, and they just slide up and down. And they generally have one of these seals in the middle, but they often seem to come off. So if you're missing that, you can buy the replacement. Okay, now we're on to the seals that are in some ways easier to work out what to do. Chimneys, we've talked about being a massive source of heat loss and gain. You can buy a range of things. Remember we said draft sealing is just about sealing a gap. I have heard of people getting old cushions and sticking them up the chimney, and as long as they're sealing the gap, that can work fine. The biggest thing with doing something like that is just making sure you put some sort of signage at the bottom of the chimney to make sure nobody lights a fire. Because you might think, oh, I'll remember. But then say if in 2 years you've gone on holiday and someone house sits your house and they have no idea what you've done, they light a fire, that's a problem. So just make sure there's something in there to make it really obvious that it's been sealed up. If you're buying something purpose made, you can go with, hang on, where's my pointer? This is an option from EcoMaster. It's a piece of high density foam that you can cut to size and put in. This is called a chimney sheep, and that is a felt pad that can be put in. This is a picture of a colleague, Cal, who's also a scorecard assessor, does assessments like I do, and he's made a video called The Cheapest Way of Making a Chimney Draft Stopper, which I thought I had the... Actually, if you just look up that, Effie, Cheapest Way of Making a Chimney Draft Stopper on YouTube, you'll find his video, and it tells you what to buy, how to put it in, and he shows you. He literally does it in front of you. So that's a really good option too. With these type of blocks, you can take them out. So if you don't want to completely not ever have an open fireplace again, you can take these out, have a fire, then put it back in. It's just a little bit of hassle. Now there's a whole lot of things drafts you can seal with filler rod and cork. When I talk about filler rod, I mean this stuff, which is basically little tubes of foam, sort of, I'm not sure if it's it's not quite polystyrene, but it's foam. It's you buy it in rolls at the hardware store and you can get multiple thicknesses of it. The reason for using that is if any gap, say in your skirtings or around your window frames, if any gap is larger than 5 millimeters, if you try and put like a no more gaps kind of cork in there, the cork will just fall into the hole because it's too big and there's nothing for it to sit up against. So that's where the filler rod comes in. You put in some of that first, and then you get your caulking gun and put it over that, and it gives it a nice backing, and then it can dry and give you a good seal. People often talk about siliconing gaps, and even when they don't mean silicon, they usually say silicon because it's such a well-known word. Just be aware though that actual silicon is not water-based and it's very messy and hard to clean up. It's great if you need an actual waterproof cork, like in a bathroom, but for general gaps and cracks around the house, you're much better off getting a water-based cork because that way it's simple to clean up afterwards. Oops, where are we? These are the kind of things you can seal up often with a caulking gun and some filler rod. Anywhere there is a couple of different kinds of building materials in a house, like bricks against plaster or bricks against wood or wood against plaster, or like a chimney surround that has bricks against maybe a timber, that's where gaps often happen. This is actually quite a new house that I went to, and it had really big gaps that had been left by the people who built the house. I'm not sure if this was the same house, but can you see around this window frame? This should be finished off with a nice neat layer of cork, and hasn't been, but it's quite easy to retrofit. This one is a bit tricky. This was a brand new double glazed window that had been installed, but as you can see, very badly. The frame itself has a hole straight through it, so that you could also use a bit of caulking gun just to try and fill it up. And this is a really common one. If you have any kind of floor heating, like ducted heating, they're often not this bad, but if you take the cover off, you'll be able to see if there's a gap around where the hole's been cut in the timber and the floor boot. This is called the floor boot. This one, as you can see, has got really big gaps, and sometimes they're so big that you can see the light or you can see the gravel that's underneath the house. So that's an easy one to fill. Put filler rod in these big gaps and then the caulking gun over the top. Electrical penetrations, here we get to, this can be in older houses but also in new houses. So when a hole is cut for a plumbing pipe or electrical works, they should be finished off properly. So that's that, and this is an air conditioner being installed. They probably didn't need to cut a hole that big, but if they do cut one that big, they really should be filling it in before putting that air conditioner on. Same with this, that's their pipe work for an air conditioner. This one I think is a chimney flue or something like that, which if you've got something that might get really hot, you need to use something that won't be affected by heat. Oh, and this is another common one. If you happen to have a box air conditioner in the wall, often they've got draughts around them. It's just the way they are. They're sort of notorious for it. So if they do, you can fill it up. I think that I might have not talked you through. Oh no, I did talk you through these ones. So we'll keep going. These are some ways, if you ended up with some plumbing or electrical holes, you could use some wrapping tape or a bit of plaster or caulking gun or some expandable foam. Exhaust fans are a thing unto themselves, and luckily there's a really simple way of fixing them up. When they're unsealed, this is what they look like from the ceiling. It's quite difficult to see what a big hole it is from inside the bathroom because of all this white mesh. It just looks like almost like part of the ceiling, but it's a massive draft issue if there's no cover. One thing you can do is put this draft stopper cover on the top, and the way they work, they're not attached to electricity or anything, but when the fan gets turned on, just the pressure of the air being sucked up pushes these vents open. So the fan works perfectly well. As soon as the fan turns off, the pressure's gone, so they just fall closed. There's nothing that technical about them, but that on top of this will stop it being a source of constant draft. The one exception there is if you've got heat lamps that are attached to your exhaust fan. So this is a combined exhaust fan with heat lamps, and they generate lots of heat, like about 300 degrees heat. If you were to put this over the top, it would melt. If you've got something like this, it's sometimes a better idea to think back to the zoning and try and zone out the bathroom by putting some draft sealing strips around the door to the bathroom. And if you were renovating, replace this, or if you're renovating and replacing a regular fan, just replace it with one that has back draft seals already. That's the best option for going forwards if you're ever doing renos. Vented windows. This is really for old houses. Houses that are newer won't have anything like this, but this was the window in our house. We're in a 70s house, and you can see it's a permanently open louver window, which is very common because it was before the time people frequently had exhaust fans. That's a big problem. Because we're just sealing gaps, you could cut some bubble wrap or some cardboard and stick it over the window, and that would stop the draft. Or you could replace the window, or you could put some clear acrylic cut to size and put that over there. The same with this. This is a window with a vent, a mesh vent at the top of it. This person did a really nice job of cutting a small piece of plywood, sticking it in and painting it. I think that's a really awesome way to deal with that gap. If you happen to have old style vented skylights, they're a big problem. So when I say vented, what I mean is that often the old ones from older houses like 70s, 80s or earlier houses, the skylight goes up, and at the top of the skylight there's mesh vents that go all the way around all four sides, and they're designed like that as a sort of a passive exhaust fan, because all the heat and the moisture from the bathroom will just go up and out of the skylight. But of course we don't want that. We don't want this permanent draft of air going up there. One thing you can do is get some of this stuff. It's a clear cellular acrylic, so plastic with cells in it, which if you cut it to size and install it in here instead of that mesh that's it's just mesh, there's holes going straight through. If you replace that with this, it would stop heat and draft coming in, or reduce it at least, and it will also reduce your heat being lost out through the skylight, and it's quite a low cost option. Other things you can do with a skylight is to replace it with a newer sealed double glazed one, but there's still going to be a source of heat gain and heat loss. So another option is to take it out completely and just put in a regular light. What else can you do? There are skylight alternatives that are not actual holes in the ceiling. They're a LED panel that sits on the roof, and it looks like a skylight with a diffuser. So if you don't have a skylight, don't put one in. Instead, do something else. That way you'll avoid having to deal with the associated issues. Evaporative cooler vents are quite a draft, and I think, yeah, the next slide, I'll show you a photo of why they're a draft. You can get free seals for the square covers under the Victorian Energy Upgrade Scheme. If you've got any rectangular ones, they don't offer seals for them, but you can buy them elsewhere and put them on yourself. The thinking behind this is that after the last time you used that evaporative cooler in summer, you put these covers up and leave them up the entire winter until you're ready to use it again. And that will stop them being just a draft in and out. This is another kind of cover that I think is still sold. In some ways looks nicer, and this is using magnetic tape around the edges. So you put the magnetic tape up, and then this cover sort of sticks by magnet over the vent. And this is a DIY one that anyone could do, just cutting some plywood and putting that in there. You could remove it each summer if you wanted to, or if you're just decommissioning the system, you could paint those white and just leave them up there. Why are they drafty? The difference between any kind of ducted heating system, gas ducted or reverse cycle ducted, is designed as an in-house sort of enclosed system. So those are not a draft issue, whereas an evaporative cooler is designed for fresh air to come in here and then flow through the house and out through doors and windows. So they're designed to be one way. What that means is that if you're in winter and your heating is not on, you're still getting cold air coming down through those vents if they're open. And if it's winter and the heating is on, it's getting drawn out the other way. It just allows flow backwards and forwards. And that's why it's important to cover them up. If you happen to be decommissioning a gas ducted heating system, there's a few things to do. Oh, there's an example of where you can see the gravel ground at the bottom of the house through the floor vent. So you would, first of all, you would seal up all these gaps with filler rod and a caulking gun. Then you can either just stuff some insulation in there and replace the cover, or you can buy these purpose-made foam rectangles that are from EcoMaster. You can stick one of them in each one and replace the cover. Or this person has removed the whole floor vent and put in some timber, painted it brown, and then put the cover back. So it's really up to you. These are all ways of just filling in the gap. The rest is the aesthetics of what you want it to look like. Recessed downlights are another draught potential. I should start by saying recessed downlights used to have 3 issues. One was high energy use because they were halogens. That's not really an issue anymore because most people don't have halogen lights. The other 2 issues that remain, though, is drafts around there, or around here or around here. And the other one is that there are holes in the insulation usually around them. So the 2 ways around this is to change them over to what's called an IC4 rated downlight. It's got to have this symbol and that writing, and that shows that it's safe to put insulation around it, and it's also completely sealed, so there's no gaps. The other option is to put a downlight cover over, which is a fire safe felt cover that goes over every light. When we're talking about gaps, these really big ones, they're sort of supersized downlights. They're called, we call them can style downlights because they're a bit like a tin can that's in the roof. Those have got particularly large drafts, and this one does as well. This one you can see the draft around the edge, and whenever there's what's called a gimbal downlight, which means it can be directed one way or the other, they're also notorious for being drafty. So that's another thing you can think of. And this is, I think this might be my last one on actual typical drafts. The reason I've added it, I didn't used to look at these when I very first started doing assessments, and then I realized what a problem they could be. What it is, it's someone with a ducted heating system, or maybe a ducted reverse cycle system. And the air in a system like that gets pulled in through a return air vent, which is a bit of a mesh on the wall or in the ceiling, and it pulls through the air to get reheated or recooled and go back into the house. But sometimes when trades put these in, they do a really poor job of it. And this one, you can see they've cut a square in the floor and just sort of balanced this duct in it. That's the ground underneath the house, and all the way around here was straight through to underneath the house. So can you imagine that's trying to draw air in? Where do you think it's going to get it from? Underneath the house. So it's going to have all the dust and everything from there. Plus, this is, if it's not on, you've got a hole in the floor. This is one in the roof, so that it goes into the return air and then up into the roof to the unit. And it is also just hanging there in this square in the ceiling. It should be installed within something like this so that the duct is encased and there's no gaps around the edge. But this one is just a hole straight into the ceiling. So if you have a ducted system, pull off the vent, pull off the mesh thing on the wall and have a look. It might be perfectly good, and it might be a really big problem. Now, it's important to note that if, you know, we were saying how in older houses, pre sort of 1990s, we had vents or drafts that were built into our houses as a form of safety to make sure we weren't inhaling unsafe things. And so, excuse me a minute. Oh, yeah. Those, we don't need them anymore, but we do need, if we do happen to have heaters that might cause problems, we do need to make sure that we're not putting ourselves in danger. So generally we would say if you have an indoor gas space heater or a wood heater, you really need to know whether it's open fluid or sealed. And the difference is that an open fluid system, whether it's a wood heater or a gas heater, if it takes air from within the room to burn the wood or the gas, and then it gives you heat, that means it's always got the option of accidentally putting the bad stuff back into the air. Why might that happen? Well, for example, if it's a really windy day, it might be drawing air in here to burn, and then a gust of wind comes and pushes it back down the chimney, and instead of that stuff being vented outside, it's vented into the room. Or say the chimney, the flue is not being cleaned properly, or there's something wrong with it. All of those reasons can cause a problem. So we generally don't draft seal where there's this kind of open fluid heater. The other kind is where it has an air source from outside that it uses to burn, and then the excess goes outside. So there's literally no way that can be pushed back into the room. Gas safety, I went to a talk by Energy Safe Victoria, and they said any gas appliance should be serviced at least every 2 years, even when it's outside. Of course, the most important ones are the ones that are inside, like a gas space heater, but even ones that are outside can be a problem. For example, a ducted gas heating system that's under the house, for example, might be letting out carbon monoxide, and it might be getting drawn into the house through gaps and cracks, and you might not realize it. So no matter what it is, it's worth having it checked. You can install a carbon monoxide monitor. They're often part of smoke detectors. And it's worth knowing what the symptoms of carbon monoxide poisoning are as well, which is sleepiness and feeling a bit, hazy. Anyway, hopefully none of you do have gas heaters indoors anymore. But if you do, just take steps to make sure it stays safe. Now, people worry if we seal up gaps in our house that their houses are going to be full of moisture. And that could conceivably happen if you just seal up gaps and don't do anything else. Often in older houses, because we have so many gaps, we can get away with not managing moisture or venting it very well, because it just doesn't become an issue because there's so much passive ventilation. So what you need to do is draft seal, but then also be mindful of how you are creating moisture and making sure you're managing it better. As an example, these are all the ways that water vapor enters our houses. Like gas heating itself creates moisture. In a day, a kilogram of water, pets and people breathing, showering, clothes drying, clothes washing, all of these things generate moisture that can go into your house. So imagine if you've got 20 litres of water being evaporated in your house per day. If you've got a really old drafty house, it's not a problem, but the moment you draft seal it, it is. So what you need to do is, first of all, reduce what's coming in by installing and using properly sized exhaust fans in bathrooms and having externally vented exhaust fans so that you're not putting all the shower moisture into the roof space, which can then come back into the house. Definitely not drying clothing inside, which I know is annoying, especially if you use ducted, gas vents to dry off your clothes, or even an open, a fire. It's really nice being able to dry clothes that way, but it does put a lot of moisture into the room. Actively opening doors and windows daily just to get rid of any moisture that does build up. You can sometimes have a dry mode on a reverse cycle air conditioner that is used to strip moisture out of the room, so a sort of dehumidifier. And then there is an actual dehumidifier, like a proper one that you can get. It's quite expensive, about $500, and I think I've got a photo coming up of it, but it can be a really good option if you're in a house that does suffer from mold or just excess moisture. Some houses do, for various reasons. So first of all, if you think your home has an issue with humidity or there's mold or things like that that you need to manage, you can get one of these. It's called a humidity sensor, and they're not expensive at all. They'll show you what the temperature is and what the humidity is. And you've got this face here that's either a happy face, which says it's in a good range, or it's an unhappy face, which is telling you there's too much or too little moisture in the room. This shows how different, viruses and fungi and mites and respiratory irritants, basically, they're happy when there's too little moisture, and they're happy when there's too much. So really we want to stay in this optimum zone of between 40 and 60% humidity. That's what this can tell you. So if you notice your house is getting a bit over humidity, you can get one of these things, which will, if you leave it on in a room for say 12 hours, it can draw 3 liters of moisture out of the air, and then you just tip that down the sink or water your plants with it, put it back on, and it will keep doing it. What we've discovered, which is a bit of a nice side effect, I've got some adult kids living at home and we don't have a clothes dryer. So if it's one of those winter's weeks where it just doesn't stop raining and we can't get things dry, they can hang out their clothes in the bathroom over a rack with the dehumidifier on, and by morning they'll be dry. So if you are someone who dries your clothes in front of the fire and you don't want to let that go, maybe you've got a little room in your house you can use as the dehumidifier room and use that as an alternative. Ongoing, the most important thing is just preventing new drafts being introduced, which is really just a matter of choosing good tradespeople who have pride in their work and are going to finish jobs off properly and not leave holes where there weren't any in the first place. So first of all, you want to look at your house, maybe go back to that picture that we had in the beginning, showing all of the common areas, and wait for a windy day and walk around with an incense stick and try and figure out what's going on in your house. Then look at whether you're going to DIY seal it. There's some great videos on EcoMaster, Effie, Efficiency Matrix, and I think there's another one called the Fix It Chicks, where they show some basic draft proofing things. So you might decide you can do it yourself, but if you can't, or even if you don't want to do all of it yourself, there are professionals. So what people often do is DIY the ones that are easiest for them, maybe the chimney, maybe the filler rod and caulking gun, but then hire a professional to do more complicated doors and windows, just so they know that it's done properly, and they won't have to worry about fixing it up. In general, resources about homes, but also specifically draft proofing, but also every other aspect of comfort and efficiency. These are some really good resources: the Your Home Manual, Sustainability Victoria, and Renew, the organisation that has a great magazine that comes out, but also lots of articles and guides that are online. And Crangamite Shire has some information as well. You can ask Prue to help you. And she can also pass questions on to me. So if anyone has questions, just contact Prue and let her know what it is you want help with. Hopefully you can borrow a home audit kit from the library, and that has the thermal imaging camera in it, so you could do a bit of a session around your house. It also has this thing which you can plug in to an appliance. Say if you're wondering how much energy your fridge uses over time, plug that into the PowerPoint, plug your fridge into the back of that, and then this will measure how much energy it uses over a span of say 24 hours. And then it will also extrapolate and go, per year, this fridge is probably going to cost you this. So that's useful. What else can we do? All right, well, thank you for listening. Do you have any questions, Monica or Prue or Merrin? I'm happy to answer.
I think I've got a question about you said about the filler rod and the corking.
Yes.
If I was going to do that on windows that actually do it from the inside, the windows cop the weather from the outside on occasion. Rain. So, but you said the corking and the filler rod are not waterproof. So I would, externally, I'd have to use something waterproof.
Yes. Is this around the frames or where exactly on the window? Is it?
So they're double glazed windows and they've got a PVC frame and they've been put into the cavity.
Yes.
But yes, you can see down the side. It hasn't been because they're quite massive windows. So I imagine it was quite hard to get the the size exact. Well, you probably can't ever get it exact, but it wasn't checked and
finished
filled.
off.
So it's a tiny gap that you can actually see through. Yeah.
Yes, you would need something waterproof for the outside. I'm just thinking, is it too late to ask them to come back and fix that up? Because they'll have all the exact right materials.
Well, the house was built maybe 2015. So
right. So that's
I think the opportunity's lost. But I mean, I'm happy to do it. I was just thinking I
was just thinking
I'll
about
have
the
to use
inside.
the silicone on the outside.
I think so, yeah. I was trying to think, would you use it? I just feel like I'm not experienced enough in that particular thing to know whether you would need to worry about waterproofing on the inside. I just don't know because it's a window. I don't want to tell you the wrong thing. But what you could do is one of those draft proofing professionals that were listed a couple of slides back, you could even ring one of them. They're generally really helpful people and they're really passionate about what they do. So I really feel like they'd be happy to answer.
Yeah. No, that's fine. I'll give that a go.
Yeah, sounds good. How about you, Prue?
Open.
Oh,
sorry.
More questions? Yeah.
Oh no, well, it was just more of a comment. We all sort of went to open plan living, but there's a real issue with that, isn't there?
There really is. I mean, there's no issue with it if energy is abundant and cheap. But the moment it's not abundant and cheap, it becomes an issue because you just every cubic meter of air you're heating or cooling costs you. So and I think it's already causing people problems and it's going to continue to cause them problems. Yeah.
No, it's interesting.
But with open plan, you can still design things so that they're open plan on all the shoulder seasons. The key is just being able to do something to separate areas into smaller areas when you need to, which might only be the height of summer and the depths of winter. With some of those curtains and things that you can put up, you could literally just take them away for half the year and only use them when you know you need to. So it's not like everyone has to have permanently zoned areas. It's just the flexibility you need.
Yeah. No, I like the curtain ideas. I'm getting a few ideas around that. So that's great.
Yeah. They're remarkably effective. I went into a house once that had fish and chip shops, how they have the strips of plastic across the door.
Yeah.
And they had that leading into the kitchen. And I looked at it and I thought, there's no way that is going to be doing anything. And I pushed my way through the plastic strips and it was toasty warm in the kitchen and not in the rest of the house. So even like strips of plastic that don't even go to the ground, they make a difference.
Yeah. I know. No, it's food for thought. It is.
Not that I'm suggesting that. I'm sure you'll come up with a much better idea.
We'll see. We'll see.
Maren,
Thank you. It's been very informative.
You're welcome, Monica. Maren, do you have any questions?
Lucinda, I've been listening very carefully.
Great.
Shyly hiding behind my anonymous thing.
Yes.
I'm fascinated by the simplicity and effectiveness of the curtains.
Yeah.
We have a house at the moment that we'll be renovating very soon.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking of how we'll block off what will be a huge opening / doorway.
Yeah.
Which will probably be about 11 feet high, whatever that is in metres, and and about 3 or 4 feet wide, a doorway width, sort of leading into a hallway. So I'm thinking of something like that. But you also gave me an idea with our little toilet window, which is problematic because it has a tiny little fly wire vent at the top of it, and the way that thing had been cut and put into it, I mean, God, how simple is it, and why didn't I think of it?
I know.
Yeah, all that.
I know.
So lots of ideas that I can work on.
I'm glad. Glad. Yeah, with the curtains, I can't remember if those things, the pictures I showed you, had them attached to the ceiling on a ceiling track.
No, I don't think they were. Or maybe
that works.
I don't know. That's what I'm thinking of doing, putting a rod or something right close to the ceiling and just hanging it from there. I might have to get on my sewing machine to make it long enough, but gee whiz, that's right.
It sounds good. And these days you can buy all the connectors to actually put the track on the ceiling itself.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So some things to look into, but I'm very excited about it. Yes.
Great.
Thank you. And thanks, Prue, for organising it.
You're welcome.
Yeah, thanks. I'm glad you enjoyed it.
Yeah. So it's always wonderful when we hear people getting inspired to do stuff.
Yeah.
And as I was saying to Monica earlier around the first session that we did, like there's a lot of like other information. We covered a lot of other topics. So that's definitely worth having a look at too. And I think one thing that we talked about in that first session that wasn't covered in this one, which I mean I feel like you touched on a little bit then before, Lucinda, is around like making a specific cool room, especially coming into summer, in that, especially if you've got a really, really large open area, being able to just section off one area, either, of the larger open area, or even if it's a bedroom or something like that, so that it's a cool room that everyone can go to, and that you're sort of dedicating your energy resources to that one room rather than trying to cool down the whole home or a whole large space. I think that's a really good one. It's one that, being from Brisbane, that's an easy thing that we always do, and something that I sort of forget sometimes is almost a thing. Like I just think it's such a normal thing to, we only had aircon in one of the rooms. So it was cool. Of course, you just went into that room, you closed all the doors and everything is fine. But I think that's a really good one as well. Yeah.
Good.
And the thing is, people used to do that. They would have a heater in the living room, and everyone went to the living room if they wanted to be warm.
And you closed the doors.
That's how I grew up anyway. And, that was it. And we've just forgotten that it's such a simple way to manage your expenses. And maybe it makes us even talk to each other a bit more. That's from my perspective of having older children who spend a lot of time in their rooms because they can. Yeah.
Okay, guys, I'm heading off. I've got dinner to cook, so
sounds good.
Okay, thanks, Lucinda.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Bye-bye, Monica.
Pleasure.
Bye.
Okay, bye. And you enjoy your gardening, Monica.
Oh, I will. I'm just actually eating dinner, but yes, I can't wait to get back out there.
Being fed and then going
thank you both.
Yep. Brilliant.
Yeah,
okay.
That's right.
Okay.
Thank you both for this. It's been very informative. Thank you. See ya.
Wonderful.
Good.
Bye.
Bye.